Howdy, I'm Jimmy. Thanks for joining me in the garden today. Everybody's starting to pop and open up. Dandelions are doing their thing. Quick note on dandelions, if you have a bunch of them, it's because your soil is compacted. Or it's lacking, I think, calcium or something. So they're not a bad thing. They fix the soil if you got a bunch of dandelions, and they naturally go away when the soil is fine. So really no reason to spray dandelions. But in this video, I want to talk about the myth of Orpheus. I'm not sure how many people have heard of this one. I stumbled onto it. And it's one of those Greek myths that you hear. But what ends up happening with all these stories of the past is it gets retold in modern times in a bunch of different ways. So I want to talk about the myth of Orpheus, and then there's a couple movies, TV shows that are kind of based off the myth that kind of spin it off in their own direction. So supposedly, and you look up the myth of Orpheus, I mean, there's like 10, 20, 30 different variations of it, just like all them ancient stories. But basically, Orpheus was, they say, was the son of Apollo, and he was like the musician, right? One of the best musicians. He was a poet, made beautiful songs, beautiful lyrics, and he fell in love with Eurydice. And I'll just give you the quick kind of take on the story, but he falls in love with Eurydice, and they're gonna get married on their wedding day, and Eurydice gets bit by a viper, gets bit by a snake, and ends up dying on their wedding day. And Orpheus finds her, and then, I mean, talk about the saddest scenario you could imagine, right? Your bride dying on the wedding day. And so he's playing his music. He's like playing the saddest song ever. And basically Hades hears his song, and they let him come into the underworld and bargain for Eurydice. Other variations say he went to the gates of the underworld and, demanded to go in and see her. And so he makes a deal with Hades to get her back, right? So he's traveling to the underworld to get his love back. It's kind of the gist of the story. But in the myth of Orpheus, he makes the deal, and the deal was all you have to do is leave the underworld. You're not going to see your Eurydice. She's going to be walking behind you, and you just have to walk out and leave, and then you'll get her back. But what ends up happening, right, is they're about to leave the underworld, and he turns around to look at her, and he sees her, and then the darkness kind of consumes her. He broke the deal. Eurydice gets sucked back into the underworld, and he gets kicked out. And so he lost his love, even though he traveled to the underworld to try and save her, was the way that story ended. But it might sound familiar, this story. There's a lot of different stories based off of it. When you read the Bible, I think the average person has heard about Sodom and Gomorrah, and how if anybody, like God was like, leave this place, because he's going to destroy it, and if anybody turns around, you're done. And of course, like, they're leaving, and what is it? Lot's wife turns around and gets turned into a salt pillar. You know. So basically, I found this myth by that show Severance that I brought up a couple videos ago. It was like a psychological trip to watch this show. It's basically based on brain chips. So in the show, these people take a job to where they have to get a brain chip, and then when they go into work, it basically like wipes their memory, so they don't know who they are on the outside of their job, and they become like a whole new persona. And there's levels to this show, and I don't really want to spoil it all, but basically the main character, his wife dies, and the reason that he does the procedure, the severance procedure, and gets the brain chip is because he loved her so much, and he was like, it'd be great to just be have my memory wiped for 8 hours a day so I don't have to think about her and that loss. And as the show goes on, you kind of find out that she's still alive, and she's a part of the severance program, but I'll kind of leave it there if you want to watch it. I'm not going to spoil what happens. So the TV show Severance is based off of this Orpheus myth. And then I'm also thinking of a movie called What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but if you haven't, you should check it out. It's a really, really good one. But in Dreams May Come, Robin Williams, the main character, he dies, and he's married. And basically, he's able to see his wife and the sorrow that she's going through. And she ends up committing suicide. And she's basically in an underworld. She's in like a hell. Like in the movie What Dreams May Come, the idea is that when you die, you create your whole reality in the afterlife. So the Robin Williams character, he's just like painting beautiful landscapes, and it's just a gorgeous, like, amazing experience. But if, his wife committed suicide, so she was like dark and saddened, and, so her reality is very different. She ends up in an underworld after she dies, and Robin Williams, he sees all this, so he's like, I'm going to go down there and save her, right? And I won't spoil that one either if you haven't seen it, but he takes a trip into the underworld to save his wife. And then there's another movie I think of, which I think of often, The Matrix. One of the best movies out there if you're trying to explain reality to people. But at the end of the first movie, Morpheus gets captured by Agent Smith and all the programs, and Neo and Trinity decide to, leave the real world and go back into the Matrix to save Morpheus. So it just seems like there's this reoccurring theme of people in love, and then they're coming back to save something they love, somebody they loved. Yeah, this week I didn't want to talk about anything too conspiracy or, too hard to handle. I just want to kind of talk about what I've stumbled upon, and it's kind of interesting. Maybe you haven't heard of the myth of Orpheus and really seen all the different tie-ins from that story. And I'm sure there are plenty more. there's a movie, of course, like the story of Orpheus or something, but it's also a song. So I'll put some clips in here. I'll play the song, which everybody's heard this song of Orpheus. I guarantee you, it's like it's one of those songs that an orchestra plays that's in like 1,000 movies. Um, I figured, I'm kind of I like to tie things together, find out where they came from. And it's just always interesting to find some old ancient story and then see it retold a dozen different ways. And the power of a story, how these stories grab you and grip you. And how some of us might be on that Orpheus story right now. We might be in the underworld here, trying to rekindle some love or something that was lost. This myth of Orpheus, it also makes you wonder how far you would go for love. Would you travel to the underworld to save your babe? I would. That's all I know. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I love you guys.